Kimberly Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K. She's an award-winning national security, border security investigative reporter for TV and the print media. Kimberly is the senior foreign policy advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy, TV correspondent, CW6 News San Diego, as well as One America News Network. Her website, thekdreport.com, theamericanconservative.com, and she's streaming live at periscope.com and Facebook. How about that? Hey, Kimberly, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself, Jack?
Well, I could be doing better because my Facebook is fit to death, so I can't see what you're wearing, how you comb your hair, how many notes you have set aside. Or
all of the above.
Okay. Hey, you know what I want to talk about is when it relates to the global military spending, reports about it rising in 2018. It says overall military expenditures rose 2.6% between 2017 and 2018 to hit a total of $1.82 trillion. This is according to a new research from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute.
Yep.
And according to figures, the total from 2018 is 5.4% higher than 2009 and represents a 76% increase over 1998, a 20-year period.
Yep.
The question, Kimberly, is what has America gained from this spending, if anything?
Well, I think that that's still an open question. I mean, and we're talking about the global spending on this. We're not talking about U.S. military here. We're talking about the global spending overseas on a variety of countries that we are still in, namely South Korea, the Middle East countries. The cost to American taxpayers is astronomical. And when you look back and you go back to, prior to 9/11, you kind of look at, where we are and how we, where we sit in the United States and around the globe and other people. And we're at more wars than we were beforehand. And it just doesn't seem like we're gaining any kind of, upper hand with some of this spending that we're allocating. And I think that you're starting to see the rise of a lot of, libertarians and conservatives worried about the financial future of this country, saying, look, we're spending a lot of money. We're not getting a lot of return on investment here. Maybe it's time to kind of start thinking about things in a different way. And a lot of people are thinking maybe we should focus on America, use some of these defense contractors to rebuild this country, pull back from some of these offensive positions that the United States government has been taking with increasing numbers year after year after 9/11.
Well, I know that you have some statistics where 60% of the global military spending came from, basically 5 countries.
Yep.
The United States, $649 billion. China, $250 billion. Saudi Arabia, $67.6 billion. India, $66.5 billion, France, $63.8 billion, Russia, $61.4 billion, and the United Kingdom, $50 billion.
Yeah.
Were the other 2 countries to spend $50 billion or more, or was that on defense?
Yeah, that's on defense. But what this shows is that, the American military industrial complex, they're making a lot of money in the world. They're selling their products overseas to a number of countries. And of course, we know in the Middle East and in Africa, a number of those countries are actually tier 1 human trafficking violators who, under the U.S. law that we have on the books today, are not allowed to get weapons of this kind of technology. I mean, we're talking about aviation, dysbronics. We're talking about high-tech gear like missile defense systems, THAADs, that it falls into the wrong hands. At some point, it's going to come back to haunt the American people. And why we need to be arming the Middle East when it is continually or perpetually at war, I think is still a good question for the American taxpayer to start talking about.
All righty. Hey, coming up on a break here in about 30 seconds, and I'm still kind of concerned about why America is putting this much money in, and I'm also concerned about deep state national security. And listen, if you want to catch Kimberly Dvorak, she's streaming
Yeah, well, it kind of dovetails together in any event, because if we're talking about national security, then we're obviously going to be talking about, protecting our country from the threats of terrorism and transnational criminal organizations. And that brings us obviously to the southern border, where migrants continue to cross, out of their countries through Mexico and push themselves all the way to the southern border, where they're walking across, turning themselves in at a significant cost to the taxpayer, money that we could probably be spending on national security had we have had a secure border in the first place.
Yeah, and some of them walking across after they get an escort with the military guards.
Yeah.
That's like a shocker.
Yeah.
But according to facts, it says the annual cost to the U.S. taxpayer, $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion over 5 years. And that financial burden skyrockets to $8.8 billion.
Yep.
And those figures are only estimates because the refugees will access welfare, other government assistance at different rates.
Yep.
The number of refugees entering the U.S. also changes from year to year. And I got to put in a personal note here. Kimberly is talking about how it changes from year to year. Yeah, I don't think it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. I think it goes up, 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 up.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen kind of an up, little bit of a plateau, if you will, and then now up, and I believe this year, maybe late last year to this year, it's going to be a straight up line, because you have to, think that the numbers, if they kind of steadily come in as they are, we're looking at probably 1.5 million illegal aliens coming into this country over and above the 1.25 million that the country already allows to come in lawfully. And this is kind of staggering. The numbers on this just absolutely are staggering. And these, again, they aren't accurate. These aren't numbers from last year, 2018, because we don't have those numbers yet. But the average cost for a refugee or a political asylum seeker, which is the Central American migrants coming up, the average cost to take care of them per year, $80,000 to take care of them. And they're getting one person, yes, per refugee.
Can you imagine that if you and I weren't, radio TV stars, okay, you think we could survive on $80,000 a year?
I could actually tell you, I've spoken to a number of single moms and single dads out there, and you talk to a lot of people that are solidly in the middle class, and, they save their money when medical emergencies come up, they pay for it. There are millions of Americans who don't have health care. There are a number of veterans that are homeless every night in this country. And we're spending, if you just think about it, and the audacity of all of this, we're spending billions of dollars to take care of people who, for the most part, and probably 95% of them, are not being persecuted by their government. What they're seeking is a better life. And so they make the trek up to the border, they cross, turn themselves in, and disappear into the country. And this, I think, is the frustration with taxpayers out there, because they're the ones going to pick up their kids at school and seeing the nice cars that these people are driving or the designer tennis shoes that they're wearing. And it's because they're getting a lot of this free money. In California, for example, as you and I both know, they're getting a cash allowance. Not an ATM card. They're getting a cash allowance to start setting up their home in California. How many Americans would love to pick up an extra little paycheck like that to maybe get their kids braces? But in the wacky world of not controlling our borders, this is what we're doing. And you've got to believe that some of these people are probably terrorists and transnational, part of transnational drug syndicates. And they're collecting taxpayer money. Is there any uproar within the left or with the mainstream media on this factor? I think if you're a single mom or a single dad, you're looking at this and you are outraged.
Yeah, and talking about, there are a lot hiding in plain sight. And I talked to a lot of people, and I remember whenever you were, talking about the 9/11, doing a lot of interviews, that's when it comes to, you have to be very, very concerned about terrorism, and they hide in plain sight.
Yeah, they do. And there was actually a plot that was broken up in Southern California. We just got word of it. We haven't heard any of the details, but within the next hour, we'll have a press conference. And it'll be interesting to see, what this terrorist attack was and what they were planning to do against American citizens in this country. The atrocities that the American taxpayers are being held accountable for here is at the expense of the veterans, which 42,000 of those people are hungry every night. You're looking at millions of children, U.S. children in this country, going hungry every single night. You're looking at parents not taking their kid to the doctor, ending up in the emergency room with, all of these different, diseases that were eradicated, like chickenpox and measles and TB and lice. And a lot of these women crossing are pregnant, and we're, as taxpayers, asked to pay for all of this when the majority of America struggles and continues to struggle paycheck to paycheck to do the right thing and pay their bills rather than living off of the government.
I'll tell you something. When you talk about like measles, I think right now in the horse race, that's number one.
Yeah.
NBC, I got to ask you if you saw this. I didn't even read it on the news today because they didn't want to get totally into it. But NBC got caught. They took a picture of a child who had measles, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, who knows, but it was, about the worst picture you could see of measles.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it with the new report, all right? And NBC, remember, they're the ones, that took out the Trayvon Martin thing, whatever, and
edit it creatively.
Remember that?
Yep.
Editing? Yeah. And as soon as I saw that now they Photoshop, they took an old photo of measles to make their story more shocking, and it should be shocking.
Yeah.
But it's like, how many times do they get away, with editing the news like that? Back to your report, it's kind of interesting. We're talking about all this money, and going back to 2016, Kimberly reports that the State Department spent, and just listen to these figures, $545 million. That was to process and resettle refugees. Now that's 2016. Right now, Kimberly, I think, what are we getting? 3 times more people?
More than that. They were back in 16 bringing in, if they were lucky across the entire border, the numbers were roughly 700. They per day, they weren't racking up these kinds of numbers whatsoever. We don't even know what the end expense is going to be at this point.
And then we got, 140,000 plus on transportation costs.
Oh, that's $1 million for all of these people to get them. That's 140 million because we bus them or fly them to their destinations. Taxpayers bus them or fly them to their destination where they want to live, with probably, allegedly their illegal alien families that are in this country.
Maybe they say, where do you want to be flown to? And they say, well, which racetrack is open right now? All right, yeah, let me know. Then we got the resettlement cost. And boy, now we're talking billions.
Yeah.
Right?
Billions. You have to think of when someone resettles, and this also take into account that refugees and political asylum seekers are the highest cost to the U.S. taxpayers because the majority of them come in and they don't speak English. They have zero trade skills, so they're stuck with minimum wage jobs. So they will continue their entire life if they are granted asylum in this country. They'll go through the process, but their lives will be, working as minimum wage probably from start to finish because they just don't have the education and the English skills required to do better in life. A handful of them get out and they do better, but for the most part, these refugees are costing taxpayers $10,000 per refugee to live in the United States. Now their kids will have an opportunity to go to high school and college and that, and they will, make something better of themselves. But these people coming in, they're going to have access to, when they retire, Social Security benefits that they hadn't really put money into. When they file their tax returns, they get the earned income child credit back. So the taxpayers, that's another burden the taxpayers, end up just paying and sending back to them in cash. A lot of these people are collecting $3,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year in money from the federal government because they have children and they claim that expense. So there again, if you're an American child, you have access to that same break, but you have to be within a certain, bracket within the taxes to take that deduction. So, I mean, it's just all the way around, you're looking at unfairness, and the people that are hit the hardest, besides the poor, are the working poor, and that would be single moms and single dads that are working every day to try to take care of their kids. And again, they're responsible with their money and they're paying for their, healthcare when they get it. And they have got to be, cringing when they see that these people come here illegally seeking a better life, and they're getting that better life at the expense of, these people who are raising their families unable to move to that next tax bracket because they can't. The cost of, them paying for their children is prohibitively high. And we know as well that the US, we're seeing declining birth rates, and these millennials are saying they can't afford to have kids. So something again needs to be done for people in this country lawfully to have children and have multiple children again. And something's got to kind of slow down, if not stop, this illegal immigration crisis. And, most people in this country say that these people are laughing at Americans, and they are.
Well, in fact, I think a lot of Americans, I don't know what the percentage would be, but they're thinking, you talk about they come here for a better life. And I think some of them, quite a few, are getting the advantage of having a better life than the country that they came to, some of the people in the country they came to. Especially when you look at all the homeless on the streets and the veterans and people that are out of a job. But so you also mentioned in this report, latest report, where they'll work and hold jobs. You say 50% of all of them that pay less than $11 an hour, but still that's taking away a job from an American. So maybe they were going to have to pay $12 or $15 an hour, and now they're once again cheating Americans.
Well, and then also think about this. I mean, if you're making that $11 an hour, and a lot of people are doing that part-time work to make that money, that does not include any benefits whatsoever. So these refugees and migrants are coming here, they're getting $11 an hour. Let's just put that, I'll give them, they're making $15 an hour. Let's just say that. We'll be generous. They're making $15 an hour here. They're getting all of the budget from the, the food stamps, welfare. They're getting the Medi-Cal in California. They're getting health care. They're getting, vision care. They're getting all of these expenses paid for by the state and federal government, to which other people who are making that, who are in this country legally and working 2 or 3 jobs, most of them, roughly $11 to $15 an hour, they're unable to move up because they're not getting that extra assistance that these folks are doing. So we're actually holding back native-born and legal immigrants in this country, and we're pushing through people that do not have any skills. We would be better suited if we took $1 billion, and I'm not joking, $1 billion per Central American country, put it down there, have some sort of public-private partnership with the U.S. ties where they could rebuild that country, build some schools, build some hospitals. That would be money better spent, and then they can stay in their countries and make their countries more like an America or a Canada. That would be a better way to spend taxpayers' money.
A lot of people say they're not spending that much on these kids in school and all that stuff. Yes, they are, because no matter what language it is, they have to have the ability to teach.
Yeah.
Those new children.
And also one other point on that, we have to remember too that these people are sending a lot of money back to their home countries once they come here. So that's more money taken out of our economy.
Yeah, I had a guest on last week, I think it was, or the week before, talking about, trying to bring up again where we could tax that.
Yeah.
How much money we can make. It would build a wall, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful, Kimberly, because a moment ago, I was thinking, boy, the thought police, sometimes known as the political police, they may come and get you because you used the word food stamps instead of the SNAP program. See, that was embarrassing them. everything. So now with the SNAP program, you got a little credit card. It looks like, Costco, right?
Yep.
Or,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, and these are just a few of the programs that these people have access to. So, when you look at the totality of it, and when you say, okay, 1.8 billion for this state per year, that's not too much. Well, look at what happened in California, and this was back, I think, in 2015. Now, we're actually going way back to 2015 on this one. And what we're looking at is the cost for taxpayers in the state of California. And in Los Angeles, just Los Angeles County alone, they were paying $600 million out of their city county budget to cover welfare and to these illegal immigrants that are residing in the state of California in the city of Los Angeles. That's just the city. So, I mean, when you look at the numbers, there are costs at every level. But once the United States, and we do offer very generous benefits for people who, fall under the radar and require these safety nets. But what we're doing is that the money that we're spending are going to a lot of people, again, who are sending a lot of their money in remittances to their home countries. And if they're sending their money home to their home countries, then perhaps the United States is paying them too much money. Because if they're working like the average American here, very, very hard to take care of their family and buy a home, they're not mailing their money away anywhere. So maybe we ought to do a little, rejiggering of that. And of course, that's not going to happen. And I know that's not the politically correct thing to state here. But when you have Cher, who really hates Donald Trump, coming out and tweeting that we ought to be taking care of people in their state before we take care of the migrants, the message is starting to resonate with even the elites of this country. And if the Dems are going to run on this for 2020, and this is going to be their thing, come here, get free care, we're going to take care of you, and you'll be our future voters, they will lose. They will lose. And the President Trump will win re-election resoundingly. Because the majority of people, even if they're not telling the telemarketer or the pollster on the phone that, hey, yeah, I don't like illegal immigration, when you go out and you talk to people, they're very, very dismayed and disillusioned as to how we are spending this kind of money on people who aren't even residents, especially when we have millions, 40+ million people in this country going hungry every single night.
And the disturbing thing is, pardon me, you hear, like in California, all right, well, we'll start building these houses, for all the refugees coming in, make sure these houses are built. Then, of course, each house, has to have solar panels and all that, or you can't build them. And then, and who's going to pay for this? And,
yeah.
I'm telling you, it's like they're opening up the gates to Disneyland. You know what I'm saying?
It is. And, and we know that these people were compassionate, the United States, our citizens are very compassionate, but are we compassionate enough to forego helping our own country and helping our own people who've fallen through the cracks and are, living wages or maybe not working at all under the poverty line? At what point do, people vote and say, look, we need to take care of people here. If there's any left over, we'd be happy to help others.
Well, Kimberly, the number one country that takes in more refugees than all the others combined is the United States of America.
Yep.
But the Democrats still aren't satisfied.
Yep.
Hey, we're all out of time. What's the best website to get all of these great reports?
You can rewatch this or send this to your friends and family from YouTube. We'll get that posted here a little bit later today, another hour or two. It'll be up on YouTube. So Kimberly Dvorak on YouTube, or you can go follow me on social media, which I always like seeing new followers. I tweet, throughout the day. So if you want to know what's going on or upcoming stories, that's probably a good place. And then, of course, thekdreport.com.